Last month, Folsom has moved their meetings to 6:30, and I didn't change the time in my calendar. Last month, I'm just sitting there working on my desk, and my alarm went off for the meeting. 45 minutes away, I'm like, trying to remember these rights like a lunatic.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to bring the meeting to order. If you would rise for the pledge of allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. This is the March 18th, 2025 meeting of the Egg Harbor City Municipal Land Use Board. And in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of this meeting was provided by posting on the City Hall Bulletin Board and by notification to our newspapers of record. And I ask the Secretary to please make this announcement part of the public record. And Donna, if you would, a roll call, please.
Mayor Ciampetti? Here. Mr. Timbers?
Here.
Mr. Guard?
Here.
Mr. Peterson?
Here.
Mr. Walker?
Here.
Mr. McKenna?
Here.
Mr. Molyneux?
Here.
Mr. Frick?
Here.
Carol Koloff? Ryan McGowan?
Here.
And Secretary here.
Thank you, Donna. We have minutes of February 18 meeting.
Make a motion.
Motion, is there a second? Second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion is carried, thank you. We have Resolution 2025-1, Eurosports, approval of the resolution. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion is carried, thank you. New business, we have Jess Holdings LLC, 1301 through 24 Martin Wilson Drive in the Industrial Park, and we have representation here, yes.
Hold on 1 second.
Resolution. Do you have a different?
It's a different form.
There was a revised one. Sorry. There were two that we could.
Okay.
Sorry.
Excuse us just a minute. Okay, we have a resolution authorizing contract for professional services with our legal counsel.
Make a motion.
Second? Second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And second resolution authorizing contract for planning and engineering services, R&V. Motion? Second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Anyone opposed?
And just so the board is aware, I know that sounds nitpicky, but under the land use law, it's not the, with all due respect to the mayor, I know she said that, that's a joke. The land use law is very specific in that the planning board has the right has the obligation to hire its engineer and its counsel, not the board, not the city council. So we need a resolution to confirm that. That's why you're seeing this when you hadn't necessarily seen it in recent years. It's a little nuanced, but I just wanted to make sure that, we'll see that every year from now on. And if there's new council next year, make sure that it's done.
We're on that, Carol.
Okay.
Don't worry.
Thank you,
We are
Carol.
on that.
Sure, no problem.
Okay, and now new business.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
Excuse me, I'm just going to step down for this.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Bridget Sykes. I'm an attorney with Fox Rothschild, and I represent the applicant on tonight's application, Jess Holdings LLC. The property in question is 1301-24 Martin Wilson Drive, Block 1001, Lot 4. The zone is Industrial Business Park, and we're here for preliminary and final major site plan to construct a 3,000 square foot greenhouse and a 900 square foot office and storage building for the cultivation of cannabis, which is a permitted use in the zone. We did our certified mailing to the 200-foot list on March 3rd, and our notice of this hearing was published in the Atlantic City Press on March 6th. And taxes are paid for the end of the first quarter. I would just ask Ms. Headley to confirm that she received everything, and I'm okay to proceed. I have two witnesses tonight. Ms. Bullock, would you prefer to swear everyone in at once or as they come up to testify?
You do it
Swear
separately.
they want separately. My first witness today is Mr. Gene Charles.
G,
Jean.
G-E-N-E?
J-E-A-N.
All right, J, oh, Jean.
Yes.
Ooh, I like that. Little flair there. And spell the last name, please, sir?
C-H-A-R-L-E-S.
And your credentials.
Um,
He's
Is he a fact witness?
yes, he's the
Okay.
business representative.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Can you raise your right hand?
Yes, I can.
You swear everything you offer tonight will be the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Charles, Jean,
Yeah.
would you, would you just set forth your affiliation with the property and with the applicant?
Yes, so, yes, I started the company and purchased the property. So, yeah, that's my affiliation.
Okay, so the property is owned by Just Holdings, which is our applicant.
Yes.
And then you are also the representative for Jessica Miala LLC, which is the cultivation licensee.
Yes.
Okay. And can you just give the background of the status of the cannabis licensing approvals?
So we reached our license, our final license from the CRC. So right now, we're going through this step for the land use board. And then upon construction and our approval to open, our CO, we would go back to the CRC and get our final license and our final license number to open.
And you received a resolution of support already from the city council?
Yes.
Okay. Can you give a general overview of the proposed cultivation use of the property?
So growing will just happen in the greenhouse, and the steel building, the 900 square feet, will be office and storage, where we will have a vault and necessary security with the parameters set by the CRC and local needs.
Okay, so we have two structures that are the same use. So the one is where all the grow happens. That's where you're referring to the
Yes,
greenhouse.
yes.
And the second building is called the steel building, that's your office and storage building. And
And you know what?
this isn't an audio.
Yeah, turn it a bit so you can actually talk to the board.
Okay,
That would be great.
That's fine, that's fine.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Lawyer with muscles.
You can't see him now. Are you, is this, yeah, you gotta scoot up a bit.
All right.
There you go, that's good, that's good.
Okay. Okay, so just to clarify, so can you explain when we say the grow that happens in the greenhouse, exactly what that encompasses?
Yeah, so cannabis, like any plant, I understand maybe some of you already have, some type of cultivation experience with other plants, but it goes through many different processes, starts from the seedling, goes into the vegetative stage, into the flowering stage. So we will bring seedlings or we'll bring trims into the greenhouse where we will grow from the vegetative stage up into the flowering stage, and we'll bring them back into the storage area to store them.
Okay, and when we say the storage area, the storage building, that structure has within it a DEA cage / vault space,
Yes.
and when we say storage, everything, all of the product after the grow process is finished is being put into the cages for storage in accordance with the regulations.
Yes.
Alright, now I want to go over some of the specific operations for the use of the property. So what are your anticipated hours of operation?
So it will be varied by daylight, we'll operate during the day. In the summer, there will be longer day periods, so we'll be there during the day. And during the winters where we have less daylight, we won't be there as much.
Okay. And how many employees do you anticipate having?
Here.
Okay. And do you plan on having any additional employees for security purposes?
So we will provide additional security if necessary during the delivery of the delivery and transport of the cannabis.
Okay, so delivery and transport, so we're talking about transport among the buildings as you're transferring things to the vault, and then delivery of vehicles who are coming to take product for wholesale.
Yes,
It's important to do this.
no problem.
All right, so let's talk about your security plan for the property. Can you go over the security measures that will be in place for the buildings and for the access and for the personnel?
So for access around this, even at the gate, we will have key fobs that you will have the entry You need the key fob access, and that will be given to employees and personnel, including myself. In terms of security, we'll partner with a local, with Verkada is the company that we plan on using, and we will have video cameras located at the entry and any places where we plan on transporting any cannabis during the operation. And we plan on also using AI technology, even drone technology, to use surveillance throughout the facility and the site itself.
And will the cameras be directly tied to the police department?
Yes,
And all of the security measures and protocols are ultimately going to be subject to the CRC and the police department's review and approval, correct?
absolutely.
Okay. We already talked about, you will have a DHH vault space, those will also have cameras.
Yes.
As far as limited access, we talked about employees, will there be anyone else that ever has to come in and out of the site outside of just employees and deliveries?
No.
So you'll always have, you'll have notice of anyone that needs access to the site?
Yes.
Okay. And then, last question, cannabis waste. Any cannabis waste that's produced during the process of the flowering and packaging for wholesale will be disposed of in the vault space?
Yes.
Okay. And then it's destroyed pursuant to the regulations?
Yes, pursuant to the regulations and standards.
Okay. I'd like to go over your odor mitigation plan. We do have, just because
Yes.
I have a written odor mitigation plan that I can present as an exhibit before we give a high-level
We'll do that
overview.
A1.
A1. Okay, and while I'm asking Sal, do you want to just give an overview of how the odor, you can use those somewhere, do you want to give an overview?
So for the odor mitigation plan using the greenhouse, we'll be using a biopolar ionization control system. So that is a system that will come with the greenhouse that will be controlled not only remotely, but it will be controlled while we're there on site as well. In addition to that, we will be using a system, we will be maintaining the vegetation that's around the facility. We'll try to maintain as much vegetation as possible, including the trees, the larger trees. That will act as a natural barrier to any odors or anything that will be propelled onto other properties. And then in addition to mentioning that, I own the adjacent property as well, which is now vacant, and it's wooded. And we don't have any proposed use for it yet, so we'll keep that, and that will also act as a natural odor mitigator for the site as well.
And then just the final, the proposed use for cultivation is confirmed. There's no proposed manufacturing or retail distribution, on-site consumption, anything beyond the grow.
No.
Any questions from the board on the operations?
Board members, any questions?
When you say your hours will be contingent upon light of day, what exactly, educate me, I don't know what you mean by that.
100%. That's a fair question. So we'll be operating during the day. By nightfall, we'll be gone. For example, daylight savings time, nighttime is about 6 p.m. right now. So our day right now, we would do our operation from about 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. And by the time the sun goes down, we'll be right out of there.
And why is that?
Why is that? Because one, the cannabis itself doesn't need us to be there. We don't need to be there 24 hours a day because of where the system is, the way the system is going to be set up. A lot of it's going to be autonomous and something that we can control not only physically but also remotely. So we won't need to be there all the time, but we'll be there during the day, especially during sun times. Like for example, like early morning, since it's going to be grown in a greenhouse, there might be potential for mildew, especially during those cooler hours before the sun comes up and to the daytime. So we may need to just go around and see if the plants are in a stable condition, if we need to change humidity, because even though we are gonna have remote access, there's some things that you can't do remotely, so we'll be able to do that during the day. At night, when we close the shades, there's not gonna be there's not gonna be a need for any human interference at that point, so we'll be able to control remotely, and we'll get any messages from the remote access and the system that we're using to monitor the operation from there.
So will you be using artificial light?
There will be a mix of artificial light, and we'll use the natural light as well.
And what is the greenhouse made of?
I think our engineer's gonna go over some of the schematics
Okay.
of the structure, just to.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
for the resolution, could I ask a couple questions?
Please
Just so it's- With regard to deliveries of supplies and removal of waste, when would those hours of operation be?
So removal of waste will happen during the day. We'll happen at the same time, so like while we're there and we're treating the plants, like for example, any trimming that we're having, that we're going through, like we're doing during the operation, we'll move to the vault during those times. And also during harvest, that's the majority of the bulk of the waste will be, that's when we'll be moving to the vault.
So when would trucks be going in and out,
You
is
know,
really
you
the
did-
question?
Did catch me, I did miss one.
Okay.
I appreciate it. So
Okay.
let's go over just as a step back, the deliveries in general. So for this type of a cultivation use, what is the frequency of deliveries with the
Okay.
stages that it happens, number one? So how often are they expected?
So right now, we're expecting quarterly deliveries for the operation, and that's when, we'll be delivering the product.
And so like that's when the product is taken from you and wholesaled out to either a manufacturing outlet or a retail
Retail,
outlet,
yes.
right? Okay. And so the vehicles would be coming pre-planned during regular business operations
Regular
during the
business
day?
operation, yes.
So relatively infrequently,
Yes.
okay. And then for the trash side of this,
Mhm.
I'm sure you're aware of this, but can you just give the background of, so how is cannabis waste disposed of? How is it destroyed and disposed of under the regulations?
Under regulations, it can be burned, we could destroy it in the vault, and we also, we can also sell some of the remnants of that as well, so.
So there's limited ways.
Yeah,
Once it's destroyed, it can be disposed of in regular trash though. If it's mixed with like kitty litter or another agent like
yes,
that.
yes, so we'd have to add a chemical compound to it for this, but we would follow the CRC guidelines for disposal.
So Ryan, are you satisfied with regard to the ingress and egress of commercial traffic for deliveries, waste disposal?
Yeah, I mean, normal business hours is a little vague. Can we get like some rough, numbers, like 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. or something like that?
7 a.m. to 5 p.m.
See if reasonable.
Fine, perfect,
Okay,
thank
so-
you. The last thing we want is neighbors saying they were here at 5 AM because the sun
Yeah.
was coming up.
100%,
Okay,
it's fair.
thank you.
Mr. Charles, I have
Yes,
a
sir.
question. Your license, is it a micro, is it annual?
It's an annual license.
Trying to get an idea of the size of your crop. Can you describe that?
Yeah, 100%. So there's multiple ways we can do that, but it's gonna be 3,000 square feet of canopy in the greenhouse. But it also could be in a 2-tier system, we can do 6,000 up to 6,000, but it will never reach that 10,000 square foot mark for that extent.
So you have experience with cannabis growth anywhere else? Is this your first project, or where do you have the experience to know, how to get something like this off the ground?
Right, so I'm gonna rely on my consultants mostly, but from a business perspective, I have experience with real estate. I own other properties as well, so and I'm also an accountant by trade as well, so I offer my business expertise, but I was relying on the operations that I have been part of, or that I have been consulted on with that experience to lead our people.
Are you a member of the LLC?
Yes.
So the waste that's generated, does it have to be hauled by a specific hauler? I mean, how is that transported off the property, and what would it be packaged in?
So the weight,
The waste, that after you know, your trimmings and all that?
so, like I mentioned before, we would use the CRC regulations, but if we burn the waste on site, then we would dispose that in any vacuum sealed, permissible use, items that we would then dispose that in the normal trash. from there.
That's what you were talking about, you mix it with some type of another
Yeah,
agent that
chemical,
destroys
yes,
it.
yes.
Yes, and then the CRC regulations permit that once it's been destroyed in that manner, it's allowed to go in the regular trash.
Exactly, so we won't be disposing any cannabis part of the plants as cannabis itself.
So you would incinerate it on site with some kind of a machine that is made to do that?
Yes,
And it's odorless when you're incinerating it?
Because of this. It's outlined
Yes.
in this.
yes, that is in the item has control system.
You probably said it, but I don't recall. How many employees you think you're gonna have?
Three.
How many? Three. Just the parking is very, very limited.
Yes.
So kind of limits what you can do if- in a growing capacity. As business needs to grow, not the cannabis grow.
But the structure that's proposed, the greenhouse, is pretty much designated for this type of specified use. It wouldn't be a purposable structure for anything other than growing something.
No,
How about other than cannabis waste, because I don't see a trash enclosure or anything like that on the plan.
I'll defer to.
So our engineer will
Yeah,
just
I'll
talk
defer to
about-
the engineer.
Okay. Any other questions from members?
But I would just say, generally, based on the use, you don't expect to generate much regular trash in terms of like paper waste or food waste from employees, other than similar probably to how you would have a normal.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
a small-
it'll be very limited, obviously, as we mentioned before, there won't be any permitted cannabis use on site, so they'll be very limited, and plant touching employees will not have food inside the facilities or anything like that, so we don't expect a lot to generate a lot of waste.
Thank you. Any other questions, Mr. Charles? Okay, thank you.
And one more thing, you harvest it quarterly, you said? How long does it take till it matures?
It could, depending on the genotype, it would be about, like, I would say on the lower side for a autoflower would be 4 months, but for larger species of cannabis, it could be 6 to 8 months for harvest.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to bring up Mr. Wilkes, our engineer. Put your name on for the record and your
Definitely less
professional
flashy, Ed like the horse. Wilkes, W-I-L-K-E-S.
Great. And can you raise your right hand, please?
Sure.
Do you swear everything that you offer tonight will be the truth?
I do,
Thank you.
And can you set forth your qualifications?
yes. Obviously, my name is Ed Wilkes. I am Regional Director of Civil Engineering for Ware Malcolm, working on land development, civil engineering projects all across the East Coast. My background has been almost 20 years in New Jersey. Started at TCNJ with my undergrad. Licensed professional in the state. My license is current, and I've been in front of dozens of planning and zoning boards across the state, and these plans were prepared under my direct supervision.
Can you tell us the initials after your name that you use?
Junior.
You know, like professional engineer?
Oh,
or-
PE. Sorry.
No, because sometimes there's lots of initials. We like the resolution to be very, very
I don't really use that.
clear.
So
But I appreciate the
Junior
junior.
Junior.
Ed Wilkes Junior PE. Thank you.
Okay.
Like the horse.
Okay, all right. So I would offer Mr. Wilks as an expert in professional engineering.
Board recognizes his credentials. Thank you.
Where should I place this so you can see? We have a couple exhibits. Here?
Right there's fine, and so maybe the other part of the audience can see.
Okay.
And none of the exhibits, I believe, are exact from the application packet, so they will each need to be marked as we go through them. Okay.
And just identify this as you would, and we'll mark that first one as A2.
Slide, Caroline.
So this is marked as A2. It's dated March 25th, 2025.
It can be.
Yeah, I know. In the future, what's in it?
It's the 18th.
18th, really nice. So I'll cross that out and put the 18th on
And what, how would you describe that, an aerial of?
it. Yeah, so this is entitled Existing Aerial Exhibit. So essentially what it is the property survey overlaid with aerial imagery of the current conditions of the property.
Can you give a description of what those existing conditions are?
Absolutely. So just for the purposes of this presentation, north is plan up, simple. The property is known as Block 1001, Lot 5. It's got a lot area of 77,832 square feet. And it's located on the northern side of Martin Wilson Junior Drive, just west of Antwerp Avenue. As you can see from this image here, to the north and east is undeveloped woodlands. Mr. Charles testified to earlier, the property to the east he actually owns. To the south is Martin Wilson Junior Drive, and to the west is a hydraulic repair company. And you can kind of see on this picture their storage yard that they're currently using. The site has 268 feet of frontage and about 290 feet of depth, so it's almost a square, not quite. And then obviously, just from the picture here, you can see it's completely wooded right now, undeveloped.
And can you also just, for the record, Martin Wilson Drive right there, is that a terminus point showing on the plan?
Yeah, that's a cul-de-sac.
So the property ends right on the cul-de-sac.
Correct.
Can you go over the proposed development? I think that's the very next exhibit. So.
We're going to date this one today. We'll call this A3. And this is a proposed site plan exhibit. What it is the site plan application as it was submitted, but we overlaid the landscaping on it and we colored it, so it'll be a little bit easier to see. Sure. Essentially what we're proposing is a enclosed cultivation facility consisting of two buildings. The first building is a 100 by 30 foot greenhouse that's 3,000 square feet. As you heard earlier, that's where the growing is going to occur. The second building is what we're calling the office storage building. That's 20 by 45 feet, and that's where office activities and the storage of the material and cannabis will be. One of the variances that is required for this application is the fact that there's two buildings instead of one.
Well, since there's two buildings, is that the combined square footage is less than the minimum required square footage per acre.
Okay. So essentially, just so y'all understand how we came to this sizing, you heard obviously testimony from Mr. Charles. He's going to be, the business owner, and this development was produced based on his market research, his scale, and essentially this is what we believe is going to be effective for this market right now. So while it's less than what's required, required is 5,000 square feet per acre. We respectfully ask for that variance for the less developed, the less large square footage. So the number is 2,194 square feet per acre.
And you also heard Jean, Mr. Charles testify that the maintaining of the additional lot size and the vegetation is also part of the odor mitigation plan for the site.
That's correct. We're only disturbing about 0.68 acres of the property. That's a little less than half, as you can see here. Part of that is because of the odor mitigation and keeping up the surrounding vegetation, and frankly, the other part is obviously, the environmental side of things. There's no need to create additional impervious, take additional trees down if the development doesn't necessitate that at this current time.
And that's more favored by the Pinelands as part of their review?
Correct. So I'll
Continue.
I'll keep going. So access to the site is from a 30-foot wide drive aisle. It's full access onto Martin Wilson Junior Drive. Again, it's a cul-de-sac. That's a 40-foot wide cart width. It's a 60-foot right-of-way. You'll see as you enter the site here, there's a parking lot for 5 vehicles. Essentially, your code requires minimum parking number based on both the office square footage and the greenhouse square footage. The office square footage requires a space for every 250 square feet. The greenhouse is being interpreted as warehouse space for a space every 5,000 square feet. Ultimately, we need 5 parking spaces. So we're proposing 5 parking spaces. One of those spaces is going to be an ADA space. One of those spaces is going to be a make-ready EV space in compliance with the latest state codes. But as you heard earlier, the expectation is 3 employees.
I'm sorry. I heard the ADA. What was the other space?
A make-ready EV space, electric vehicle.
Oh, thank you,
So-
sorry. I'm 62, some of this lingo is new to me.
Sorry. And to the left here, it's kind of hard to see, but there's a striped area about 10 feet wide. And that area is specifically for the loading operation for deliveries and pickups. That's been sized specifically for the delivery vehicle. The vehicles expected here are what we call sprinter vans. You may see them driving around with your Amazon packages. They can be as small as 20 feet long to as large as 27 feet long. And essentially, we've placed that right in the front corner. There's multiple reasons for that. You heard a little bit earlier about the requirements from the CRC and for security purposes, and ultimately, we need that space to be as close to the facility as possible to minimize transport throughout the facility. There is a variance request associated with that loading space. Your ordinance requires that loading spaces are 60 feet from the frontage, from the public right-of-way. That loading space actually starts 35 feet from the right-of-way. Again, I think the main reasons for why we have it there are for security purposes, for ease of loading. I believe that based on what we know about the operations and loading and unloading occurring kind of quarterly, it's going to be used very minimally. And then ultimately, to provide a compliant loading space, we would have had to add a lot more impervious coverage, which, again, the Pinelands is very, very strict on minimizing your disturbance, minimizing your impervious coverage. So that was done with all that in mind. And then finally, one of the key components to that requirement is to obviously keep it out of the public, view. And we are proposing landscape screening kind of around the perimeter of that loading area, around the perimeter of the parking area. So we think the benefits of that location from a security perspective outweigh any detriments that might be foreseen from the public right-of-way there.
And can you also just elaborate on the fencing, the type, and the location of it around the facility?
Yes. So the facility is fully enclosed with a 6-foot-high chain link fence. That chain link fence wraps around the buildings, wraps around the parking area. It crosses in front of the driveway. That's where it's going to be gated. As you heard earlier, that gate is going to remain closed at all times. The only time it opens is when the staff or the employees are coming to visit, or if there's a known delivery or pickup coming.
Could you give some background on what the proposed lighting is for the building, and in terms of the hours and when it would be on and off?
Sure. So as part of the application, there's we'll call it two light fixtures proposed to kind of light the pedestrian and car parking areas. One is a wall-mounted fixture that's going to appear on that office storage building. It's on the front side of it, mounted at about 12 feet high. It's a typical LED fixture. We also have a single pole-mounted pole light with 2 fixtures on it. That's going to be in the right corner as you come up the driveway, as you enter the parking area. Those are again LED fixtures, they're mounted 20 feet in height, and the selection of those, the height of those is all in conformance with your ordinance. Well, I want to specifically note that what we're proposing to do is have these lights on at maximum brightness up until midnight. And then at midnight, they would go to a 50% reduction, but they will have motion sensors on them. That's a requirement with the CRC, is that all the building entrances and windows and stuff like that are lit in a way that there's motion detection available for that to pop on. So that is the case here, and those lights will remain on until, at that 50% reduction until dawn.
Would they be visible from, based on their location, foot candles from the surrounding properties?
They will not. They're all dark sky compliant, downward facing with no spillage over into the adjacent lots.
Okay. And then, there's no signage that's proposed, and that's because this type of use, there's not allowed to be signage for the CRC regulations,
That's correct.
nondescript as possible. All right, could you give a little overview of what the structures look like, what they're made of, as we foreshadowed earlier?
Sure.
Real quick, before I transition, the site plan calls for 8 foot fence, I think you just said 6, do you know which one?
I believe it's
Ten
supposed to be
feet.
inside.
8 foot.
8 foot.
That's all right.
So we're gonna mark this as A4. It's entitled Proposed Greenhouse Images. It is dated the 18th. Okay. And so, at this stage, as you're all accustomed to, applications come in with conceptual designs to be finalized ultimately with the building department, and in this case with the CRC, who takes, regulations over this type of facility and this use. But essentially what you're seeing here is the proposed greenhouse, again, 3,000 square feet, 100 by 30. The picture on the left is an isometric of the structure, a typical A-frame extending up to about 15 feet in height. Someone asked earlier about materials. The frame itself is a metal using aluminum, potentially steel, likely aluminum. And then it's also a combination of plastics, fiberglass, and then filming around the outside of this thing. So if you were to walk up to it, you could in theory see into it, but it's not transparent where if you're stepping away, you can't actually see what's going on inside it. I'm sure many of you have seen greenhouses before. The picture on the right just represents an example of one of these. And, this structure, as well as the other structure we'll talk about, they're pre-engineered. So ultimately, there's companies that specialize in these structures, and that's what we're going to be doing here.
And then is the office and building structure material? I'll pass it out if you want to.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll focus A5.
So we're going to pass out another image of a pre-engineered office storage building. Again, it's going to be steel. Right now, it's projected to be up to 14 feet in height with earth tones and a couple doors. But typical pre-engineered, prefabricated building.
It could be A5.
And while you're speaking about that, one of the comments in Mr. McGowan's report is about providing footwalk access among the two structures. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, the current application doesn't show connectivity between the two buildings, so I'm going to flip back to A3. And so the original application just showed sidewalk in front of the office storage building. Essentially, what's been asked in the review and we agree with is providing access connectivity to the door of the greenhouse, which is eastern facing. So we'll be adding pavement really to connect the two.
And I know it's everyone's probably most exciting topic to hear about. drainage and stormwater. So just very broadly, there were a few comments in Mr. McGowan's report regarding the stormwater. I know you had a conversation, will the applicant comply and address all the comments that he raised?
We do comply and we'll address all of them. We spoke a little bit earlier today. There's one recommendation to use a particular type of material under the basin that the Pinelands Commission had suggested a different type of material. And ultimately, the suggestion from your engineer is actually probably a better suggestion. I just want to make sure that the Pinelands is going to accept that. So we discussed it and ultimately we're going to bring that comment to the Pinelands Commission and make sure that's acceptable. But we agree to work through everything. And then high level, just to explain the drainage here. Obviously, I mentioned the Pinelands. We've got to go through the Pinelands Commission to get approval. They're the latest DEP requirements that were changed in 2021, updated in 2023. Essentially what we're doing here is we're capturing all stormwater both from the roofs of these structures and from the proposed parking area through vegetative grass filters and through bioswales. And they're going to basically transmit that water to a small scale infiltration basin, it's called, that's located in the lower left corner here, that's southwest. And that basin is designed to infiltrate water from larger storms through a sand bottom. And that sand bottom consists of a certain type of sand that allows the water to kind of get into the ground quickly. And that's the material that we were discussing with your engineer on exactly what that should be.
So speaking to that, as far as the status of the outside agency approval, so we have our certificate of inconsistency from the Pinelands, and the one comment in there was regarding the soils, right?
Correct.
So we'll go back for final Pinelands approval. The status with the soil commission?
We have an approval that we'll have to ultimately just amend as we adjust the plan slightly related to that basin, but.
And the property is not located within the jurisdiction of the county planning board?
Correct. It's not, it's outside of their jurisdiction.
And then city water and sewer departments will be part of the submissions with the building permits?
That's correct.
Quick note, the city sold the water and sewer systems to New American Water.
Make a note. And to update the application form.
So it's only like a year ago.
Okay.
So fresh.
So I believe we covered everything in Mr. McGowan's report, but I will defer to him if he has any follow-ups as well as the board.
Hey, Brian.
Sure. So we'll sort of circle back. Did you cover the maximum height of each of the buildings? Because we didn't have the height of the greenhouse for the plans and then the height of the shed.
Yeah, so I'll cover it. Obviously, the code allows up to, I think, 40 feet here, 45 feet. The greenhouse, as it's currently designed, is going to be 15 feet in height. And the office storage unit is currently 14 feet. And then the shed, we can talk about the shed real quick. So the shed is, there's a shed out here that I didn't mention, located behind the office storage building. We had shown it as 20 square feet on our plan. It's meant to be a small area to house some equipment to maintain both the property and some of the buildings. Upon conversations both with Mr. Charles and with the board engineer, we'd like to adjust that size to up to 199 square feet just to have some more room. But if you can picture what this is, you know, if you have a single family house and there's a shed in the back, that's really what this is, a modular piece that's going to sit there and house some additional equipment.
Okay. I went through the loading area and the reason for not having setback. The minimum floor area per acre. This doesn't come up often here. I just wanted to sort of review the intent so the board understands. The intent was so that essentially these properties were not like underdeveloped as they were bought up, and you know, we didn't want people to buy a property and build a little tiny building in the corner and, you know, hold on to a whole giant piece in the industrial park. When the industrial park was established, the idea was, you know, they wanted to promote uses that would utilize as much of the area as possible. So that's the reason for that requirement. I will say that they're only using about half of the site, and the second half is kind of preserved. So I would say of the disturbed area, their minimum floor area probably meets, but per ordinance, it doesn't meet because the property is a lot larger than the other, not disturbed, a good portion. The applicant did clarify that they do have a conditional cannabis license from the state. We've sort of established our process here because all of the cannabis uses are conditional uses. We've sort of determined that the conditions are that it's permitted in the zone, that the number of uses permitted by the ordinance has not been exceeded, and that a conditional cannabis license has been received from the state. They clarified that last point. The city had placed no restriction on the number of licenses in the industrial business park, so that one isn't a factor here. And then it is permitted in the zone, so they clear that hurdle. The one disclaimer I'll put out there is that the applicant should understand the approval from this board does not guarantee that the facility will qualify for a cannabis retail license from the city or state. So just that disclaimer.
And I will clarify that no proposed retail use is contemplated, only cultivation.
Very well. The 5 parking space calculation is correct. They sort of went through that. The lighting fixture locations. We talked about lighting for the parking lot. The ordinance has a requirement for lighting of doors, pathways, even windows. But I think a fair compromise would be wall packs over the location of any doors on the proposed facility, just so that those are covered and the walkways are covered. So that concession you guys can make.
Yes, I would have thought it's going to be required by the COC that they have to be overall doorways.
Okay. Yeah, well, the only site lighting was shown was in the parking lot lighting, so I just want to make sure that we covered that. The odor mitigation measures, they're all proposed for the building itself, not for the greenhouse, is that correct? Do you know?
They're actually for the greenhouse and both this building.
Okay, so the rendering has like direct exhaust fans going out the building, so that's not a totally accurate reflection. There will be a full odor mitigation system on the greenhouse as well as the other building.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to clarify that. We talked about the shed. For the board's benefit, the applicant went out and did a round of soil testing and found soils that were not permeable enough to permit an infiltration basin. So they're proposing soil replacement. They went out and did a second set of soil borings to a deeper depth, or test pits rather, to a deeper depth to confirm that there are more permeable soils underneath the clay silt material, I'll call it. So the plan is to remove the less permeable material in between, get down to the more permeable material underneath. What he was alluding to earlier was that the Pinelines recommended a K3 soil, which is like somewhere between 2 and 6 inches an hour. And my recommendation is to use a K4 soil, which is 6 to 20. It's more permeable, has less fines in it. It won't clog up as quickly. So my strong suggestion is to use a K4 soil for the soil replacement, but as long as the Pinelines will accept that. So I know, soils and basins are kind of an afterthought for most places, but we have lots of problems with that here, and I know some work. So I wanted to sort of go through that in detail.
How deep were the pits?
The pits had to go almost 10 feet deep. I think I want to say we were replacing 4 feet below the base, 4 to 5 feet below the basin to get to the good stuff. I can pull up real numbers, but it's within 10 feet.
So there's been discussion at this board for many years from the people, and Ryan knows what I'm going to say, because we talk about this with every applicant, that especially on new construction when they're having to build retention ponds and that kind of thing. Been a lot of projects in town that had to go back and do it over at great expense because they didn't go deep enough initially to see what's really underneath there. And throughout Egg Harbor, because they used to make pottery here, there's a lens of clay, and it could be within 15 feet of the surface, and it could be deeper. So to try and head off any problems down the road after you start constructing it and finding out, the drainage up top may be good sand, but underneath that, at 18 feet, you may have a lens of clay, and if you're expecting that to perk down, it's not going to. And what I'm saying is, borings to 30 feet or so would have been more telling than just a test pit. And I don't know if you did percolation testing where they put it in to see how fast it drains out and all that, which will tell the tale also. But there's a problem in and around Egg Harbor in many locations that there's a lens of clay, and it complicates retention pond construction.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I think that's exactly the reason why the Pinelands Commission has to go back out and do more test pits. Because essentially we did a round and we said, well, this is questionable, go do more, go do it deeper. And we did what they asked, went back and ultimately concluded that, and included an infiltration test. So, you know, they went out there and did a double ring where you soak it and then you let it go down. And my assumption is, as part of the CO process, you ultimately would go out and make sure that that basin is draining as it's supposed to drain. That's what I'm typically saying, or seeing at least. So, you know, I think it's gonna be the obligation that we make sure we've replaced enough to do it.
So the Pinelands is telling you to dig test pits, but I can tell you from professional experience that the test pit doesn't give you the picture, because you can only go so deep within the limits of the depth of the machine that you're doing it.
Yeah.
So a traditional boring or vertical boring, you know, gives you more information and it'll tell you exactly what's there. Or you can refer to borings that may have been made in the area that might give you an idea what you're up against.
For a little background check, works for test well grading, so.
Okay.
Borings are kind of-
And you understand that any resolution that may approve, because obviously we haven't gotten to that point yet, and any resolution that may approve the application would include language that says that the drainage system needs to work always, or COs could be pulled.
The high school out here had a massive problem because we told them the same thing, and it was a different situation because that was turnkey for us. We didn't have any oversight or any of the planning. That was the state of New Jersey. And we told them on many occasions that you're gonna have problems with drainage because you didn't make the pit big enough. And then after the fact, after it's already constructed, they were back in there excavating and digging it out to try and remediate it. Because it wouldn't, after it was in place and working for a little bit, it didn't perform the way that it was supposed to.
And it's literally a lake, Cedar Creek Lake back there. And just, I think last year, or maybe a little further back,
They just remediated
they just
it again
remediated it again.
for the second time. Yeah.
And one of the reason why we're talking about K3 sand is because what normally happens, and I've used all over the state, is that we specify a K4, which is like 20 inches per hour, and then after they buy it, they think they got the K4, they put it in, they test it, and it's around 5. And all of a sudden, they're ripping it out, which is the experience of what you've heard. So typically, what we always specify is, hey, we're gonna conform to at least a K3, but we know we're gonna go buy more than that, because the same issues happen. It's not just here, it's across the state.
Well, the material will let the water move. It's not the material that we're worried about, it's where that material, where that water is going to,
Yeah.
that it can't get out because of inadequate drainage around it. I guess if you have enough of it, you know, certain of it will go laterally, but,
So the second set of borings, they did go down 18 and a half feet. So it's even certainly deeper than a traditional test.
so what would the grade of the finished basin be?
The basin was 4 or 5 feet deep. So they went, let's call it 12 feet below the bottom of the basin conservatively. Yeah, they had like a perched groundwater for estimated seasonal high at 76 inches, which was above that restricted layer. And then they said they encountered groundwater at 188 inches. So that was probably the true groundwater.
So, seasonal high waters, for real numbers here, seasonal high water, it's where the groundwater is, was 42.5. It's an NAVD 88. The bottom of our basin is at 45. So you have about 2.5 feet between the water table and our basin.
The bottom of the basin.
Yeah. So all of that material will be replaced so we can get into the water table.
Ryan, did you have one?
Yeah. We know the stop sign should be shown, and stop sign, stop bar should be shown at the exit drive.
Yes.
One thing I thought about while you were going through the fence, you may, I'm not aware of any automated swing gates for like a 15-foot length. So So if you're trying to have automated access, you might have to have a slide gate. And you have them along the front, but just something to think about. The application will also require a request for a waiver of sidewalks, which we didn't get into. And then the external fireproof trash enclosure. Both of those are typically required in the city's ordinance, so we need a waiver for those two things. And then, let's see. I think that was all that we had. Were you guys able to figure out if you have any discharge in the design condition?
We're still working on it.
That's fine. So for the board's benefit, the last comment on my letter is that facilities are only allowed to retain and infiltrate up to the 100-year storm whenever that's the pre-development condition. So essentially, if there's no runoff before you got there, you can't have runoff afterwards. If there is runoff from the site in a pre-development condition, you have to have runoff from the site in a post-development condition. You can't just retain and infiltrate everything. For a site like this, it probably wouldn't make much of a difference, but for a large site, you can't just dig a giant hole and hope that all the water's going to go down. You have to, count for some level of discharge. So we can work that out administratively if the board's okay with everything else, but I just wanted to let you know what that comment was about. But I think that's really it for me. I think we've gone through every other comment and issue that we had in my letter.
Board members?
Can you clarify the building? You said prefab, is it like a pole barn for the office space type construction?
Like prefab, like pre-engineered metal steel. What's your question, sorry?
But it was like a pole barn.
More of a pole barn style?
I don't know what a pole barn style is, sorry.
It's a steel building, has
Yes.
steel purls in it.
Well, it's usually, pole barns a lot of times are using 6x6s or
Right.
8x8 pressure treated, then they put metal on the outside.
Yeah, that's essentially, I don't know the dimensions of it, but
And the greenhouse, are the sides translucent, or are they solid panels and then the roof part is translucent?
the sides would be as translucent as the roof
Okay. And that's concrete bottom that everything sits on?
on a slab, yeah.
Is there anything on top of the fence that stops somebody from climbing over?
We're not proposing any barbed wire or anything like that.
And there's no lighting around the greenhouse?
There will need to be lighting on any entryways or windows per code, but that would be the only lighting.
So as part of your security plan, you'll need to work with the state and the police department to ensure you have full coverage of the entire
Yes.
site, correct?
Yes.
Any other board member?
Straightforward.
Well, this is just my opinion, and everybody knows me and what I'm going to say about trash enclosures. Why are we waiving the trash enclosure?
Well, let me ask you a question. In the rear of the office building, is there enough space between the fence to put in a trash enclosure? The standard trash enclosure? Next to where the sheds would be?
Well, you would need truck access or something to be able to service it.
It would have to be in proximity to the loading space.
I think the intent has been that the amount of waste being generated from this facility is something you could put in like a typical trash can, and it would be wheeled out on picked up by private haulers. So we didn't look at this as something that we'd see in a normal development with a large scale trash enclosure area.
So the city, for your benefit, has a long and tortured history of negative experiences with trash enclosures and waivers of trash enclosures. So I think that's what the chairman brought it back up. I mean, if you can find somewhere to tuck it, I don't even think you guys would have an objection if it's in the front of the loading space, would you?
Well, I mean, not if it's, built to the,
Right.
to the code
Right.
and, opaque.
Right, so the ordinance requires a fireproof enclosure that provides a visual barrier as well. So it would be helpful if we could locate one. I mean, it doesn't have to be enormous, but even something that you can just keep the roll-off cans in.
And the loading dock area.
Right, somewhere adjacent to the loading dock area, I think would make a big difference.
So that's a grass area, is what I'm assuming?
Right now, that's a vegetated,
This whole area?
grass filter, that's the Pinelands is making us do that.
Like tall grass or like playground grass?
It's between, it's not your standard,
Oh.
sod, but it's not your.
landscaping type of.
Correct, it's not ornamental grasses.
Yeah, they treat grass, like soccer field grass, as a nitrogen producing surface, but then they let you pre-treat it with a grass filter strip. So the rules make no sense, but that's right.
I don't know if you mentioned, but do you think that we could accommodate a trash enclosure either in that front by the gate or to the closer to the building,
Man,
but right adjacent to the loading space?
I think we could find a place for that, just, is that,
Are you
Yeah,
willing as a
we're
condition
willing.
of approval to
Absolutely.
do a compliant trash closure? Thank you.
Ryan, is there like a standard size per square foot?
The ordinance doesn't require a specific size. I mean, typically, we're dealing with somebody who has, like a type of enclosure that you can fit a full roll-off canister, it's like 8 feet wide.
Yeah.
We don't have a requirement for that, but I mean, it wouldn't be difficult to build something that size to fit a standard roll-off container.
Yeah, I was just asking.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know that you need a roll-off container size, just a small rolling.
Yeah, I mean, two
Can of,
cans would probably
2
be
yard or 1
sufficient for
yard,
the size
whatever
of
they
the
are.
site, but, yeah, we can sort through details. It's really, I mean, if they're gonna have that, it would essentially have the size for a trash can or recycle bin, would be the minimum requirement.
Okay.
In the future, you can put more greenhouses up if you choose to?
I mean, I think there's room on the site for additional greenhouses, yes, but I don't think that's in the current business plan.
The basin is only large enough for this development?
Well, correct, as we've shown in the calculations. Now, we've done some other math to make sure that we're able to do things in the future if we have to, but that's not what we propose with this application. We'd have to come in there and make some modifications to the basin.
And then have to go back to that.
And we'd have to come back here.
So is all that grass area part of your stormwater runoff design?
Yeah, it's
Currently.
pre-treatment for runoff into the basin.
So would it make sense just to extend that loading dock area 6 feet, put your canister? Well, the issue, it's a setback issue from us. But
Yeah, this
we're already
direction-
approving a setback.
This direction needs to be a minimum length. I can check to
Towards
see
the,
if we
towards
have
the
it.
street.
Well, that's, yeah, you
Oh,
got
you're
a
saying
little
put the
additional
trash
length
here.
here, so.
Yeah, so if you
Sort of
extend,
sneak in that corner.
you extend that loading dock area towards the street 6 feet,
Oh.
you're already getting variance for your front setback. So, variance is a variance.
Right, essentially located back at the tail end of the loading space.
Tail end or at the front end. I mean, I would think the trucks would want to be, I'm assuming that the state wants the delivery trucks as close to the building as possible for
Yeah.
security purposes. So as long as it's, pleasing to the eye, as Jack said, I mean, push it close to the street and make it look nice.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking that they have a little extra vegetated filter strip here, so you might be able to sort of steal this corner and have something here so the trucks can back up, still have access to the greenhouse and to the building, and then your trash is right next to it, so you can sort of access that way. Yeah, exactly.
4 by 6.
That could work.
And there's no minimum requirement for that. We can talk about fine.
Yeah, we could figure that out administratively, but essentially you gotta fit the cans that you're gonna use. That's
We realize that you're probably not going to generate enough trash, but we're looking at years down the road, and as the building gets lived in and used and things change, and the experience has been in the city with other projects where the approval is that they're going to store the trash inside, and that's not what happens after
I'm gonna
that.
remind you, it's not you, it's the next guy. There's a lot.
Wouldn't the change of use for you come back before the board though, where you propose that?
Well, I mean, if somebody wanted to use it as a warehouse, or as a greenhouse just to grow either cannabis or something else, I mean, I think that would be permitted in the zone, the structure's already there, so it wouldn't have to come back to the board. But yeah, we couldn't tell you the number of structures that people came in here and said, we're just gonna store cans inside, and then they sell the building, and now they're all outside, and it's a mess, so. You guys are out in the industrial park, so it's not quite as, spaces as some other properties, but still for consistency. There you
Ryan, this has no bearing on this project, it's more for just my
Mhm.
own knowledge here. So if 10 years from now they choose to leave, go to a bigger site,
Mhm.
since you already have the square footage of the greenhouse, someone else could come in, tear the greenhouse down and put a bigger steel building, like warehouse type building in, and still be compliant for
I don't think so.
But they'd have to come back for site plan approval. Any change in
Right.
use would have to come back before the
Okay.
board.
So to me, it's warehouse.
Right.
Yeah, but anything commercial, any change in use, they'd have to come back and show you what their plan is.
Okay.
Well, the impervious right now would
But the
already be
impervious
sized
area
for
would
that.
change,
Oh,
that
yeah.
would be the easy part.
You could convert it to a warehouse easily, yes.
Okay, that's what I was trying to get to.
Yeah, you'd still need some.
I understand they
additional-
have to come back to us, but as far as pine lanes, as far as
Yeah, impervious
water
is impervious
runoff,
for their
all that,
purposes.
the all impervious surface, they do change the structure type for another use.
Correct, yeah, it could be anything.
Thank you.
You have more, Ryan?
No, we got everything on.
Any other discussion from the board?
Oh, missed the ice cream.
So might as well stay forward.
You should have took a Mr. Salty break, huh? Okay, so we need to frame a motion.
Always in the positive, doesn't mean, oh, I'm sorry, oh, public. Rachel's reminded me, I need to go to bed, you gotta rely on Rachel.
Thank you, Rachel. And anyone from the public wish to speak on this application? No one from the public?
Always in the positive, it does not mean that you need to vote in the positive, but the motion would look like this. Approval for preliminary and final site plan approval with the variances and waivers requested as outlined by both the applicant and your engineer, both verbally tonight and as outlined in his report, with the conditions that have been discussed with regard to the drainage and the trash.
Someone offer a
Does the city have any stipulations on how many grows you can have in the city?
There were no restrictions.
There's no restrictions on it, just retail?
Correct. Yeah, I mean, the conversation we had was, do you know what businesses are in the industrial park now? Do you care what the next two are? And so, that's where we're at. There are no restrictions.
There's only one operational, right?
Correct, there's one in what was an existing building, there's three buildings on the site, and there's a micro grow in one of them.
Oasis, 14 hour.
Yeah.
Is there a motion?
Make a motion, we go with her motion. I know you're not allowed to make it, but, yeah, basically what she said is how I would frame the motion.
For a second?
Second.
Roll call, Donna, please.
No discussion?
Any further discussion?
And if somebody, when you go through roll call, could give us a nugget for the reason, that would be great. Otherwise, you make it.
Ready? Mayor Jim Petty,
Yes.
Mr. Timbers,
Yes.
Mr. Garth,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mr. McKenna,
Yes.
Mr. Molyneux.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, good luck.
Would you like just for the file, PDFs of these? Yeah, we'll send these. Okay. I've been asked to before for something. Yeah, we'll take them. Send PDFs
But he said Gene, so he's like
Mr. Charles, what's your middle name? What is it?
Adlin.
Adlin. Hi, Jean. Oh, the maiden name, yeah.
Good luck. Good luck, Mr. Pearl. Thank you.
Good luck.
I know just need to get it. You got a lot to do.
Congratulations.
Are you mom?
Yes.
Are you very proud of him?
Yes. That's my last one.
Oh, it's the last one. How many do you have?
I was a 4 and I just was. It's like you come next to it, that's why you call it, you make it for just.
Oh.
Well, yeah, I use the Actually, we have 4 applications on the first agenda. Oh my goodness.
So you
guys are gonna see it,
a
me,
son in the
Jack,
army?
and my other partner all come
Wow,
out.
thank you for your service.
I'll try to give before Mario.
Second one is that coming up.
I'll try again.
You've done well, mother.
What are you doing?
I worked last night, I didn't see it.
God bless you.
So Cash was like saying, they're wanting to get.
This is my kid. We don't look alike, but I tell everybody she's my kid.
Giving them to us, and I just didn't know about how. So like somebody else already had a resolution of support basically that isn't moving forward.
You wouldn't have seen that.
Not important. I'm just gonna say, we didn't adjourn.
No. Thank you, folks.
Sorry.
Hey, is there any old business? Any report from council?
I have a couple things just to report. We did get an EV grant from the NJDEP. The cleanup day is scheduled for May the 3rd. If anybody wants to help out, let me know. There's also the Sam Weiner Easter egg hunt on the 12th at 11 o'clock right at Rotary Park. And the infamous, or should I say, I'll say infamous, Frat House on Atlantic Avenue did a cleanup of Philadelphia Avenue from 0 block to Deer Street. So they're trying to
They're a good group here.
get involved in the community. Well, they're a little noisy at times.
Well, it's
And a little
kids,
rowdy, but they have been trying.
They helped the EDC for the food trucks.
Yes. And that's really all I have right now.
What's going on with the boatworks? I see the horrible green fence that went up.
Got trees up too though, John.
They're requesting an amendment to the redevelopment plan from city council because the redevelopment plan applied to medical use cannabis under the state's old rules, which don't exist anymore. So the language was just inconsistent with, a recreational grow. So we're updating the ordinance, we're passing an ordinance to update the redevelopment language. We've gotten some concessions out of Dr. Traki. He cleaned up the property. If you look behind the fence, he got rid of 10 plus road molds. 10, all the ones along the fence in between there and the building.
Yeah, we don't want to just move around the other side.
No, he actually got rid of them.
Okay.
I talked to a couple of employees who wished to remain nameless, and all of them were shocked that he did anything. And they said, I don't know what you did to him, but he spent a good amount of money and time to get rid of a bunch of molds. Primarily the ones between the building and the fence line. So there's only, I think, one mold left there, and then one new building lift, where there was all kinds of junk lined up along that fence. So he put up the screen. I kind of told him you did yourself a disservice by putting up the screen before you cleaned up. You should clean it first and then put the screen up. And then the other thing we talked about was providing some vegetation from the end of the fence line to the end of the building, because that's where he's going to get the store mold, on the side up closer to the road. So he planted 25 to 30 or so arborvitaes in a stagger pattern along the front. They're already 6 feet tall. He said he was assured they'll be 10 feet tall by the end of the year.
They don't grow.
So that, the idea was if we could provide a visual screen there where he's going to continue to store things, and then the rest of it is a lot more open than it was.
You can't grow these, I'm not gonna leave some stuff.
Yeah, right, they have a real hard time going inside the building, right? Yeah, so that's sort of the progress that we've made. We've gotten to clean up a bit and provide that visual screening, so we would get his revisions to the redevelopment plan. I mean, frankly, the revisions were just very technical and minor in nature, so I think we've gotten a good number of concessions out of him for what he was coming in asking for. But yeah, that's the update.
Mr. O'Brien, there's no requirement for what you use for screening on a fence?
So he came in and met with the city, and I think we left with different ideas, and he just kind of ran out and did something like immediately. He didn't like talk to us about what he was going to do. But no, the ordinance doesn't have any specific requirements about how to screen a fence. So I mean, he bought mesh material to put on the fence, which, you know, I think would be allowed by ordinance. I don't think we could stop him from doing that. I think he thought he was doing a good thing.
Well, he's going to have to maintain it, and the problem is that we're not going to have any enforcement powers to maintain it because of other reasons, but the wind the other day was blowing it 6 feet off the fence.
Yeah, so
I
he
don't
put
see
it
it
on the outside
lasting.
of the fence, opposite the direction of prevailing winds. It's essentially a sail now. He should have put it on the inside of the fence.
Oh, just wait, it's fastened, it's not gonna last.
Yeah, well, it looked like he first went out and did it fastened it like every 6 or 7 feet, which was nowhere near enough. And then he did have a guy come back, because I stopped to look back in the fence and check out the plantings and all that stuff. He did have a guy, a young kid, go in and fasten it like every 2 or 3 feet, trying to go back and tighten it up, but still not, you know, spectacular.
Low budget.
Well, I'm sure the material cost a lot, but the installation left a bit to be
Oh,
desired.
like you said, it's gonna rip.
Yeah,
It's gonna rip.
well, and when it does, then we can cite him for not maintaining it, but, yeah.
Excuse me, can I say something? Doesn't the ordinance say? the
You have to identify yourself for the,
arborvitae's-
identify yourself for the record.
Kim Hesse, 236 New Orleans Avenue. Doesn't the ordinance say there's supposed to be arborvitae's on each street, lining the streets? And that was supposed to be the
Yeah.
covering?
Right, the current redevelopment plan does say that, so I still need to talk to him about that requirement and whether he's requesting a waiver or installing plants fully around the building. So that's to be determined.
Who makes that decision on the waiver?
It'll be the city. So,
Encourage him not to make that waiver.
yeah. That's fair.
His reputation has not been very good on upholding what he says he's going to do.
I don't disagree with that at all. It's long and tortured history of that building.
One of the few times I'm gonna say, please put in more bushes.
Call them trees and then we'll really be out.
There you go.
Off camera.
Yeah.
Good, thank you.
Sure.
Is there any other public comments? Any other comments, questions from board members?
Yes.
Did you want to talk to them about the,
Identify yourself?
identify yourself?
Nanette Galloway.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm fried, I was busy all day today, can't even remember my thoughts. The application checklist.
Oh, the green element checklist? Yeah, so, we put together a, what do we call it, energy conservation plan, but, a community energy plan for the city a year or so ago. As part of that process, we developed a green development checklist, which is, mandatory to fill out, but not it's totally voluntary, all the things on it. So, we'll be sort of cleaning that up and adding that to, development packet. It's mostly informational for developers, like, you know, have you thought through all these things? Are you aware of these funding sources? Are you utilizing, you know, clean energy techniques and various things that you can do to sort of reduce heating and cooling costs, that kind of stuff. So none of it is required, you know, the builders are not required to do any of it, but we just wanted to go through the list to make sure they thought about it. And then at least the city will have a record of, you know, whether people did things or not. Because that can help towards the certification that the city gets from, who is it, New Jersey?
Sustainable Jersey.
Sustainable New Jersey, right. So, we'll be launching that probably in the next couple months, I guess.
Any other comments?
I do have one last one, I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead, John.
Ryan, are you aware what they're doing out the lake? They were doing test boring all across the roadway between the lakes. What's their intent?
So the county is still in the midst of design to replace that bridge. So they're planning on doing that as a 2026 project, I believe. So they're doing borings, verifying for the footings and foundations for the new structure. I think they're also looking to see material characteristics to see if they're going to anticipate, because they're going to rip some of it up. My understanding is they're planning on doing half and half, so they're never going to close it to traffic. They'll just have alternating traffic with like an automated signal or flag people. But I think that the other part of it is trying to figure out how narrow can they make it before they're going to get piping through, because we maintain a higher level of water on one side than the other. So if you have that condition and you narrow that gap, you can have a piping condition where it starts to wash the soils through and can erode the downstream slope. So I think they're just trying to get all the ducks in a row.
This year, when they drain the one side, they drain the other side vertically low.
Yeah, well, the stop logs
There's
didn't
been
work.
$10,000 worth of fish put in that lake that have probably been lost.
So
Because somebody couldn't put a board in place to keep the water level high.
yeah, I was advised, I didn't visit, I was advised that the stop logs or whatever they're supposed to hold the water back did not work when they.
They haven't worked for years.
If they're not there, they can't work, just letting you know, that's.
They can't work. I don't disagree with you on that.
Lumber is what slides into the slot that.
Sure. Well, so we did have the discussion with the county about the need to maintain that, because originally they had aspirations of taking that out, and we said absolutely not. That needs to be functional when the bridge replacement project is over, so we did address that in the county design team.
So will they address that when they redo this?
Yeah, we made that a requirement, they'll have to make sure that it's functional when they're done with part of the bridge.
And do they know that they're wanting to put a bike path across
Yeah,
there
so
too?
they're, French and Perillo is the design engineer for the bridge, CME is the design engineer for the bike path. They have been in communication, both through the county and separately. They're both still trying to get to the Pinelands Commission. That's been a ridiculous exercise. But they're aware of each other's projects and they're coordinating.
Do you know what the bridge is gonna look like?
I don't, I haven't seen any conceptual communication.
Will they have something, a walkway on the bridge, like to fish off of or anything like that, so that people could fish or something?
I know that the bike path will not extend across. I don't know about pedestrian facilities. I can ask tomorrow, though. That's not, I can ask and relay to Don Hunchie, just email you guys. In fact, I'll email right now.
That's right, that's it, I'm done.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second, all in favor, please say aye. Anyone opposed? We're adjourned. George, have a good night. You too, Lisa.
See you. Bye, guys. Thanks for coming. See you.
Bye, you guys.
Don, I think I signed everything that I was supposed to.
Sorry about that agenda.
That's all right, I knew that there was an update and I didn't print it.
Please, just click the same camera, yeah.